Hello everyone in our class. I am Wael Muhammad. Today we are going to talk about the cultural differences among countries and their effect on the international purchasing. For the sake of this study, I picked Saudi Arabia as an example of explaining the cultural differences in the international purchasing, and this comes down to the fact that I was living and working in Saudi Arabia for 12 years. And I assume I understand the key elements that make Saudi Arabia has its own uniqueness in the international business. Our video today will focus on three cultural dimensions, which are power distance, individualism versus collectivism, uncertainty avoidance. But before we start diving into details, we find it necessary to have a brief introduction about Saudi Arabia and its business environment. Saudi Arabia. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is the largest Arab country of the Middle East. It's located in the Arabic Gulf Peninsula, that area which is known for its richness in fossil fuels. Saudi Arabia is a monarchy ruled by a king. The king is assisted by a council of ministries that he appoints. Recently, Saudi Arabia has embarked on a program of economic reform and diversification called the Vision 2030 plan. This plan includes social reforms as a driver of economic diversification. Saudi Arabia is a member also of the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC. It's also a member of the Arab League, the G20, the United Nations, World Trade Organization's WTO, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, and co-chairs the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. Saudi Arabia hosted the G20 in 2020. A business article called Doing Business in Saudi Arabia, Challenges, Risks, and Culture by Drew Donnelly mentioned that doing business in Saudi Arabia is attractive for many foreign investors. Plentiful business opportunities and political stability increase the chances of business success in the KSA. However, there is a lack of cultural awareness, and before attempting to expand business to Saudi Arabia, it's important that we have a strong understanding of the local culture. Saudi Arabia has a rich Muslim heritage, and its religion plays a central part in its culture. Islamic law is the governing law of the nation. This religion shapes the values of the people, how they form relationships, and how they interact with family, business, and the community. Having this in-depth culture awareness can help a company develop a competitive advantage in today's global marketplace. It can also allow businesses to have a better understanding of cultural challenges and the ability to create benefits while considering these differences. Now we will start talking about the power distance in Saudi Arabia. Power distance, as defined by Oxford, is the one of the attributes of national cultures identified by Gert Hofstede. It refers to the degree to which members of a group or organization accept an uneven distribution of power amongst the members. In some cultures with large power distance, it's regarded as acceptable that the power is concentrated in the hands of senior managers. Whilst in other countries, there is an expectation that power will be diffused. The power distance index is used to determine how the power distance is high or low in the countries. Accordingly, the high index indicates that the hierarchy is clearly defined, present, and unchallenged, while the low index indicates less rigid or authoritarian system. The people in a low index society or group are willing to challenge authority and readily interact with authority figures in the expectation that they can influence decisions. As we mentioned earlier, Saudi Arabia is a monarchy, which means that the power is concentrated in the hands of a minority called the royal family, and this indicates that the power distance is tending to be high. With that said, Saudi Arabia is ranking 80 in the Power Distance Index, which is indicative of a high level of inequality of power and wealth within the society. This ranking suggests that population has an expectation and acceptance that leaders will separate themselves from the group, and this condition is not necessarily subverted upon the population, but rather accepted by the society as their cultural heritage. Individualism versus collectivism is perhaps the most well-known of the cultural dimensions. It refers to the degree to which individuals are independent or interdependent. Countries with a high degree of individualism, such as the United States, tend to emphasize individual achievement and independence, while countries with a high degree of collectivism, such as China, tend to emphasize group harmony and cooperation. Saudi Arabia's individualism ranking of 38. That translates into a collectivist society as compared to individualistic culture is manifested in a close long-term commitment to the member group. That being a family, extended family, or extended relationships, loyalty in a collectivist culture is a paramount and overrides most other societal rules. Uncertainty avoidance. This dimension focuses on how cultures adapt to changes and cope with uncertainty. There are 3 tiers of uncertainty avoidance according to Geert Hofstede. Those are high uncertainty avoidance. That's the culture which behave in strict manners and have less inclination towards change. Predictability is critical to success, and these cultures focus on systems over innovation. Per Hofstede, people with high uncertainty avoidance generally live in Germany, Italy, Belgium, Greece, Guatemala, Portugal, Mexico, Japan, and South Korea. The second tier is moderate uncertainty avoidance. This class has varying levels of uncertainty avoidance, with people respecting and utilizing systems while welcoming new ideas and questioning norms. People with moderate UAI combine high and low uncertainty avoidances and generally come from the United States and Canada. Low uncertainty avoidance, that's the third tier. Low uncertainty avoidance cultures display greater ease when in predictable situations. They require as few rules as possible, and they can approach change through adaptability, pragmatism, and comfort. National cultures of lower uncertainty avoidance include Ireland, Sweden, Denmark, Singapore, Jamaica. Saudi Arabia's uncertainty avoidance ranking of 68 indicates that the society's low level of tolerance for uncertainty. In an effort to minimize or reduce this level of uncertainty, strict rules, laws, policies, and regulations are adopted and implemented. The ultimate goal of these populations is to control everything in order to eliminate or avoid the unexpected. As a result of this high uncertainty avoidance characteristic, society doesn't readily accept change and is very risk adverse. Now that we understand the cultural differences of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we need to know how this may impact our decision to do business or procure materials from Saudi Arabia. Since the power distance in Saudi Arabia is high, then we should understand that the companies there are subjected to a firm law and to the will of the royal family. Companies don't have the freedom in doing business with others like companies here in the United States. If the royal family decided for any reason not to deal with companies from a specific country, all the companies would have to follow this. When Saudi Arabia decided to embargo Qatar amid some political conflicts, conflicts between them, the royal family ordered all the companies, businessmen, and even the people who are working in the media figures to boycott Qatar and to depart its premises in an immediate effect. And I can tell you that none of them could show any resistance to the decision, and all of them have been submitted to the will of the royal family. Therefore, this dimension should be highly considered before starting business with suppliers from Saudi Arabia. Also, since the Saudi Arabian community are leaning collectivism rather than individualism, this should make us understand that most of the corporates there are family-owned business companies, which means unlimited responsibility in management from the owners. The family members who own the business are the ones who have the supreme authority over every aspect in their business. This means that the degree of democracy and the tendency of changing the top management is extremely low. Having uncertainty avoidance on the high side makes Saudi Arabia has strict rules which are mainly based on religious laws. For instance, Saudi Arabia have a different banking system than the one that we have in the US or in the West in general, based on the Islamic law on financial deals. In Saudi Arabia, consuming alcohol is extremely prohibited, so we shouldn't expect that any business regarding liquors could be done with them. Despite that, Saudi Arabia recently showed more tolerance and more readiness to change than before. Now we see women are allowed to drive. Saudi Arabia was the only country in the world who was prohibiting women from driving. Now they can drive, and now they can work shoulder to shoulder with men. Also, the dress code rules have been relaxed regarding women. A lot of touristic resorts now are being established in Saudi Arabia to attract more visitors. These things were not happening in the past. But the strongest evidence that shows how Saudi Arabia is changing is their plan to reduce the reliance on fossil fuels as a main source of income and to diversify their income sources and establishing a new investment box to invest in foreign countries. That was the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope the video's content has met the requirements of this assignment. Thank you.